Welcome to Nebraska Preps Postgame with Damon Benning and Jacob Padilla.
Welcome into the Nebraska Preps Postgame. We got some echo. We okay, Shane?
Okay.
All right.
I think we sound good now.
Oh, we can restart it.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Sure.
No, just keep going.
All right. Terrific. Gotta love live shows here. Welcome into the Nebraska Preps Postgame. I'm Ravi Lulla. That's Jacob Padilla joining you here today. Jacob, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. It's good to be able to do this with you. It's first time.
It is. We've done a lot of different forms of media together. This is a first here, so I'm excited about that. But I figure we've done full 4-hour radio shows together. We should be able to handle a half hour on high school sports. So I'm excited to get going. We did have some technical issues, so we are glad that, cross our fingers, knock on wood, we get that we're able to stay live for 30 minutes here, but we'll do our best.
Nothing else, the podcast should be just fine. Whether we lose internet or not, that thing will keep recording. So we should be good there. But appreciate you sticking around after your show. Damon's out this week, so called an audible, and honestly, you watch more high school football this week than I did, so figured you'd be a good sub for us.
Yes, that is a very low bar, just because you were not able to watch any this week.
I saw a little bit of stream. I saw caught a couple of the end of the games that you saw as well on the streams. So
yeah, so it's good to catch those. I do appreciate that the streams are a little bit more prevalent now. You can catch up on more, because otherwise, if you're going out to a game on a Friday night, you're getting one game and nothing else. I was out at Omaha West Side as they, I think, took care of business is an understatement against North Platte. That thing was over pretty much before it started, but I mean, we can start there if you want.
How about we start with the only one versus two matchup this week?
You're right.
Damon and I teased it at the end of last week's show, and I think it kind of lived up to the hype. Our friend Mike Sauter was out there down in C2, number 1 Norfolk Catholic, came back for a 24-19 win against number 2 Battle Creek there.
Well, and that game was interesting, not just because it was 1 versus 2, but there was I believe, 2.5-hour rain or a lightning delay. So our guy Sauter was kind of was literally out in the cold.
Well, no, he got invited into some random person's house and was just chilling in there.
Yeah, I was like, man, I just stayed in my car. I'm not sure I'm going into just some rando's house in some random place. But that's that Nebraska hospitality for you there.
People out there taking care of them.
And so you always appreciate that. But that was obviously a super high profile matchup. Norfolk Catholic moves to 6-0 on the season. Battle Creek loses their first game. What did we learn about that one?
I think we learned that they're very deserving of being the top 2 teams in the class.
Absolutely,
and
probably not a ton of difference between them.
No, I mean back and forth the entire game, and Battle Creek had a chance to end it to win it at the end. Norfolk Catholic's defense just stepped up, but it was 17-13 Norfolk Catholic at the half. Obviously, after the weather delay, they came back and got it going again. And then Battle Creek got a touchdown there to take the lead. And they forced a fumble. Then they fumbled it, and Trent Euler recovered it at the 5. Struggling through my notes here.
Get the notes.
I should have wrote this a little bit more clearly, but but Norfolk Catholic went back in front with 35-yard touchdown early in the fourth quarter, and that ended up being the final score there. Battle Creek blocked a Norfolk Catholic field goal with 4.5 left. Then they decided to punt with very little time remaining. And I saw a Sutter tweet about that, and I was very confused. And then they got an interception and got the ball right back. So shows what I know there. The coach made a good field there. Got it back at midfield with a minute and 4 remaining. So Battle Creek had a chance there to march down the field, but Norfolk Catholic ended up picking the ball back off. Trevin Suckup got the interception to seal the game with 49 seconds left. So just a wild game. Carter Jansen had 2 passing touchdowns. Brandon Collars had 1 rushing touchdown. And then for Battle Creek, Trent Euler the Nebraska walk-on commit.
Mm-hmm.
15 carries, 142 yards, and a touchdown. Had a 50-yard passing touchdown, had 5 tackles, and that fumble recovery. So that just wild back and forth game there. Big time plays made on both ends, but in the end, Norfolk Catholic held on there to remain at number 1.
Well, and certainly worthy of our guy Sauter sticking it out through the weather to end up getting to witness that one and bring. A great matchup, and ended up being a game that a lot of times those 1 versus 2s don't really live up to it. That one, even with the delay, probably lived up to the hype.
And he's had some pretty one-sided ones he's had to drive out for. So I'm happy for his sake that if he had to drive out there and then sit through the weather delay, that got a game that went right down to the wire between 2 great teams.
See, that's how he's more committed to this than I am. Is I always stay in the metro because listen, if it's a bad game, I'm not driving 2 hours to get there. So we appreciate that Sauter goes and covers those things for us. It's obviously a great game that deserved our coverage. So I'm glad he was able to see that one. You want to start with Class A?
Yeah,
Class
I was
B?
going to say a less great game that you were in attendance for, and another team showing they're very clearly deserving of a number 1 spot.
Yeah, kind of unlike Class C with Norfolk Catholic and Battle Creek, where you could kind of probably flip a coin and either one of those teams might be the best team in the state. Class A, pretty clear, I think, who the best team in the state is. Although I know Millard South would bristle up at that assertion.
Couple of weeks, we'll find out.
And we'll find out a week from Friday whether or not they have a case there. But current number 1, Omaha West Side knocked off North Platte 63-0, and it was every bit of that. I mean, there's really no other way to put it. North Platte, they had played Grand Island pretty close recently.
1-score game, I think, the week before.
And, then we saw, and we'll get to Grand Island Kearney later, but Grand Island Kearney played really close. So that was, maybe a little surprising on the West Side that I thought North Platte may be able, especially with their kind of option veer offense, where that can be a challenging look for defenses because they don't see it a ton anymore. I thought they might provide a little bit more resistance, but Westside was just overwhelming.
Damon's talked about this all season, just the way that this Westside team has, between the coaches and the players themselves, kind of motivated themselves each week. And obviously North Platte a year ago beat them. That was the 1 loss. And
out in North Platte, which is a brutal trip.
And so this year they very much had that in mind.
Yes.
And I think the final score indicates that they were no worries about this team kind of sleepwalking through a game. They've been able to get up every single game, take care of business.
Well, North Platte lost a ton of guys from last year too. So
some dudes. Yeah, it's a completely different team, but
but
I think the margin of victory and the way Westside plays again just shows like these guys are locked in. They're on a mission, and North Platte just happened to be the team that caught them last year, so they got their wrath this week or this past week. But
obviously all the regular characters played well for Omaha Westside. Obviously Caleb Benning, Anthony Rizak, my personal hero.
9-13 for 125 yards passing and 3 touchdowns and 3 carries for 68 yards and a touchdown rushing. So,
honestly, kind of disappointing rushing numbers to be.
16 touches. And
6 touchdowns.
Or 4 touchdowns on 16 touches and almost 200 yards. Again, they don't. Well, they didn't need him to do much because Jamez Ross, 14 carries, 173 yards and a touchdown.
He ran the ball really well on Friday. Obviously, Caleb played well again. You had Teddy Rizak play well also on defense, and of course Christian Jones as well.
So 15 tackles for loss as a team, and an interception for Benning, and a fumble recovery for Christian Jones. Bo Ryan led the way with 11 tackles, 3 for less. That defense, they're just so many playmakers on that side of the ball. And then on offense, so Trevor Spady, Christian Jones, and Caleb Benning all had a receiving touchdown. And Ashton Matoyer, Brody Gock, and Garrett Englum all had rushing touchdowns. 6 touchdowns by 6 different players there. That's in addition to the Rizak rushing touchdown.
Well, and then you had Christian Jones. That fumble recovery was returned for a touchdown. It was stripped by Benning, picked up by Jones, and he housed it. And I got to tell you, once that kid's running, you're not catching him.
Yeah.
Caleb had kind of it was kind of a funny moment where, so he ripped the ball out and then just kind of pointed and walked to the sideline because he saw Christian Jones pick it up and he knew nobody was catching that dude. So dominant performance. Obviously, they've got a ton of playmakers on both sides of the ball. That's the reason they've been the number one team in the state all year and deservedly so. And, anything else on that one?
No, I think we're good there. Number 2, Millard South got a bit of a scare at down in Seacrest against another top 10 team in Lincoln East.
Yeah,
another one our friend Sauter was at.
Thursday night game on that one. That one got a little chippy too. A little. I mean, that's being underselling it.
Yeah. Well, so I was covering volleyball that night, and then went over out in Elkhorn. Went over to DJ's dugout, is 5 minutes away from Elkhorn North, to catch the end of the Packers game, just because I was close enough.
Yeah, might as well.
They pulled off something crazy the previous week. I didn't get to see the second half, so I was like, "Oh, let's see how this goes." But pulled up my phone and was sitting there, and was like, "Oh wow, Lincoln East has the lead."
Yeah, it was 21-17 in the fourth quarter.
21-17 early fourth quarter, and then here's what happened for Millard South in about the next 4-minute span.
Yeah, so they ended up scoring 28 points in the fourth quarter, and this was a pretty rapid sequence here.
So basically immediately after that, Jet Tamala to Isaac Jensen, 28-yard touchdown. All right, got the ball back. Jet Tamala to Amarion Jackson, 61-yard touchdown. Okay, forced a punt. Amarion Jackson, 69-yard punt return touchdown. Okay, and then Dylan Cool, 58-yard pick 6.
Yeah.
So all that. So they got a punt return, a pick 6, and 2 receiving touchdowns
in 4 minutes,
all in the span of 4 minutes, to turn that game from a deficit for Millard South to a no doubt more than doubling them up. So that just absolutely wild game.
And it's a super deceiving score, right? Because if you're not aware of what happened and how it looked, you look at 45-21 and you're like, oh,
in control all day.
Millard South out at it again. Literally, we're losing in the fourth quarter, and then had a crazy turn of events. Millard South has had a couple of those this year. I was out when they played Elkhorn South earlier this year, and you almost want to call it fluky, but when they do it consistently, it's hard to call it that. Between the pick 6s, special teams touchdowns, defensive touchdowns, you can make that your calling card, and if you can do it consistently, then obviously that's you can't put it in the fluky category anymore, and that's sort of what Millard South has proven throughout the year. Not to mention, you've got guys like Amarion Jackson, who is turning into a really, really good player. Yeah,
that Tamala to Jackson sophomore connection has just been getting better week by week. Tamala 17-27 for 278 yards, 3 touchdowns. Did have a pick, but also had a 13-yard run. Hasn't really been a guy that's used his legs this year.
Yeah.
Still, the sophomore Gabe Pruka is still filling in at running back. 21 carries, 94 yards, and a touchdown. And 5 catches for 79 yards through the air. He's been a really good dual threat option for them, catching passes out of the backfield in addition to running the ball with Nolan Feller still injured. Jackson, 2 catches, 81 yards and a touchdown. Isaac Jensen, 5 catches, 56 yards and a touchdown. And he's a guy that he hasn't necessarily put up the volume, but he's another guy as a sophomore, 6'5", big body, basketball player. Good job at going up and kind of fending guys off to catch contested balls. He's another really good option for them. Had a big game in this one. And then Cool. Dude, it's just, we talk about that defensive line and the way those guys wreck shop up front. And mentioned J.R. Laquana and Aiden Miller and those guys, but Cool on that back end. Like he was the guy who had the pick 6 against Elkhorn South.
He could be a game changer.
He had I think multiple picks, including another pick 6 when we had Hurrdat Sports big game a couple of weeks ago. I think it was the Gretna game. Maybe
was that was when they were at Gretna. They won 38-7. And he, I believe, got the big game chain on that one.
So Cool had a receiving touchdown and the pick 6, so scoring on both ends of the field. So just really impressive all around performance by them. Lincoln East, Jeter Worley at quarterback, 13-31, 96 yards, 2 touchdowns. But that pick in the fourth quarter had a rushing touchdown as well. So he he had a tough day yardage wise moving the ball, but
Mhm.
did score 3 touchdowns. Dash Bowman, 17 carries for 74 yards, but they kept him locked up in the passing game, and he's been one of the best all around offensive performers. Every week is huge receiving and rushing total for them. And Millard South did a good job to take that part of his game away.
Sure. That defense has been really good this year.
Yeah. And then Landon Lingenfelder had 4 catches, 60 yards, and 2 touchdowns for East. So East remains there at number 7. The coaches didn't really knock them for that loss,
and rightfully so.
Yeah.
So. Real quick before we move on to number 3, Millard South has Columbus. That's an away game for them this week. West Side is at Kearney. Both of them on the road this week. Kearney's a probably much tougher test than Columbus this week, but they're on a collision course for each other a week from Friday, so a week and a half from now. So that I have to imagine that'll be the big game of the week for Hurrdat.
I'm assuming you'll be there as well.
Yeah, that's a pretty fair bet that I'll be there for that one. So.
I will be at the Devaney Center. So.
Well, I'll be sure to send you some photos or texts or whatever we got there. So moving on to number 3, the other 2 Millard schools, Millard West and Millard North. This game was pretty close as well, maybe closer than some people thought. Millard North coming off their first win of the season against Lincoln Southeast, actually held a third quarter lead against Millard West 21-14, but were unable to hang on. Millard West ends up winning that one 28-21.
Yeah, 21-21 late in third quarter when Brody Peterson hit Jackson Williams for a 42-yard touchdown. And that dude is an absolute
incredible
game breaker in every way.
Incredible player.
He touched the ball 5 times for 199 yards and 3 touchdowns, according to our friend Gary Sharp, who was on the TV broadcast for that. Just unbelievable. Yeah. Like the running game, the passing game, like they just.
And Brody Peterson's played really well this year as well too.
Yes, they've had that combo of quarterback, running back, and receiver for them has just done the heavy lifting and been really tough for teams to deal with. And I mean, Millard North had a chance. That they basically had the ball one last drive.
This was a crazy sequence of plays, by the way.
Yeah. So. I texted you after, third and 14, I believe.
Yeah.
And Millard North ran a quarterback keeper around the left end, like just spun around and run off the end, got a tackle at the line, no gain. I'm like,
I think they were hoping to get half of it, right? And I think the plan was to go for it on 4th down, and they were trying to basically cut the yardage in half. So I kind of understood, especially your Millard North, you don't pass the ball great. But then they come out with this crazy 4th down play where it's a handoff to Vermoss or pitch to Vermoss in the backfield. So he's coming around like an end around, gets the ball, and then throws it, gets drilled, by the way, and throws it to Mooberry downfield, who makes one of the better high school catches I think I've ever seen.
I tweeted afterward, that dude has to have the highest highlight to reception ratio I've ever seen. Like, because every catch is a circus catch.
Yes, his ball skills are actually incredibly good. We don't see it a lot because of the offense he's in with Millard North there, and he gets a lot of his attention for what he does on the defensive side of the ball as a safety there. But man, when you talk, like, he is so good at going and getting the ball. And this, like I said, it's probably one of the best high school catches I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And so they converted on 1st down, but then ended up in 4th down situation again. Weren't able to convert.
Didn't work out. Yeah.
And so they end up dropping that one 28-21 to Millard West.
Yeah. So Millard West still sitting there at 5-1, just the one loss to Millard South.
1 point, first game of the season.
Yeah.
That's brutal.
Yeah. And they go to Lincoln Southeast, Millard North. They've, after a really rough start, really rough schedule, and they didn't perform well during that rough start either, but they've gotten better week to week, and they're starting to.
Well, and you wonder a little bit, like, if they had been able to pull off that Creighton Prep game, how much does that change their fortunes a little bit? Because I think it did take them a while to gain their confidence. This group of guys that's pretty talented for them, still only juniors. It seems like they've been playing forever, but this isn't even a senior class yet. So you wonder if that might have changed their fortune a little bit. But Obviously, there's no way to know that, but their schedule does lighten up for them a little bit. They've got Omaha Bryan this week.
Yep. So kind of speeding along here, Elkhorn South at number 4 took care of business 51-7 at Fremont, held them under 150 total yards. Obviously, the schedule lightened up, but after losing Carson Ronner, Elkhorn South has kind of just been able to kind of settle in and let Madden Riggs kind of take over at quarterback, lead them forward. They their first kind of real test since losing Ronner, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they lost him in that one game, and that was against Central. That was a tough game, but they host Grand Island on Friday, who's at number 9 in the poll this week. After Grand Island gave Kearney a scare, number 5.
Gave them everything they could handle in that one. And that one's, I think Kearney is probably better than Grand Island, but that's a rivalry game that they always play super close out there. It ends up 10-7 in favor of Kearney.
Yeah, Grand Island was up 7-0 at halftime, and then Kearney won the second half 10-0, hit Jake Krakel at the game-winning field goal in the fourth quarter, 25 yards. Not a great day for Griffin Novacek, who's been really good for them at quarterback, but Eli Randolph, 107 yards on 9 carries. Abel Molina had a 35-yard passing touchdown. And Carter Lee was on the receiving end of that, is a good receiver for them. Bodie Albers led the offense for Grand Island, 170 yards passing and a touchdown, 45 yards rushing. And so now Kearney, mentioned, will host Omaha Westside there on Friday. So it's 6-0 versus 6-0. We're going to be losing an unbeaten team at that point.
And that'll be really interesting because, we know how challenging it is a lot of times when these metro teams have to go out into central or western Nebraska on those road trips. That's what happened to Westside last year in their only loss of the season, went out to a pretty good North Platte team, a team they probably should have beat though, but they weren't able to focus in and get the win there. So I'm sure this one's really high on their radar going into the Millard South game, but you do have to wonder, these are kids. You wonder how much there might be a little bit of a look ahead. Will be interesting to see how that one plays out.
Yep. Kind of speeding through here. Omaha North 69-0 against Omaha Northwest. Don't need to
not a lot to get into there.
Papillion the Vista 55-0 against Burke, and now they've got a tough one on Friday. Papillion the Vista sitting there at number 8. Peyton Prestito, 14 carries, 164 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Pretty good game.
He's really, really good.
Eric Ingerson caught a touchdown, had a couple of sacks, fresh off his flip to Nebraska.
I'll say Nebraska commit Eric Ingerson.
And then we already mentioned Grand Island. The kind of the other big game in Class A on Friday was Bellevue West against Gretna. And Bell West, the offense still, they're struggling to get it off the ground, but I gotta say their defense has kind of come along now.
It really has. I've been impressed.
And they pulled out a 14-13 win against the Dragons there. And
late touchdown pass from Kalen to
McMorris.
McMorris, I believe it was about 30 yards, 31 yards maybe.
31-yard touchdown. Yep.
He engineered, I believe it was a 90-yard drive
Something like that,
to get them in the position to have that touchdown pass. So, if you're a Nebraska fan, you're looking for some positives from Kalen, what's been a little bit of a tough year for him, statistically speaking, and for Bellevue West, frankly, they had high expectations and they've already got 3 losses on the year. That was a really big win for them.
Yep. Isaiah Weber, 21 carries, 115 yards, and a touchdown on offense, and 9 tackles, including 3 for loss on defense for Gretna. He continues to have a fantastic season. But that Bell West defense managed to limit their offense. They're limiting them to 2 touchdowns. And again, extra point ends up mattering in that one, just like that Millard battle early in the season.
High school kickers, man, it can be tough out there. Although we see it in college and NFL too. Yeah. So it's really not isolated to them. You want to hop into Class B?
Real quick, the Central Prep.
That's
battle.
Right. I forgot about
that. Was the other one we were watching. Yeah,
maybe the best game of the week.
34-28 overtime win for Prep. And Prep was up 28-20 after a kickoff return touchdown late. Omaha Central marched down the field and scored, then converted the 2 points, a couple of short rushes there to tie it up and send it to overtime. Central got the ball first, fumble, Prep recovers, and then Caniglio hits Jacob Ruby for a touchdown there to win it in the overtime there. So
Caniglio's not going to get a lot of headlines. He's not probably going to get a ton of recruiting attention, but I low-key kind of really like him as a high school quarterback. There's some things he does really well.
He's tough, and just a junior, I believe, has stepped in last year, kind of won the job midseason as a sophomore. So they're Preps again, just kind of Miller North, a team that really tough schedule, but
they're up to 3-4 now. They're kind of finding their way along.
Yeah, getting ready for that playoff positioning there. Like you said, jumping up to or down to Class B there. Not basically everything went kind of according to seed. No upsets there.
Bennington knocked off Blair to stay undefeated. Top 10 match. I think it's a top 10. Waverly Scotts Bluff.
That was Scott 62-6 against Pius. Scott is a wagon right now. They are just running over everybody.
And their only loss on the season. There's a reason they're number 2 with a loss, even though you've got some undefeated teams to find them. That Bennington game is. I have a feeling that motivated them a bit the rest of the year.
Be interesting to see kind of the energy in that one if we see them matching up in the postseason.
I kind of hope we do.
But there were 2 top 5 teams that faced tough competition there. Waverly moved up, Elkhorn North jumped back up to number 3 this week after a 35-17 win against Elkhorn, and Waverly kind of dropped to number 4 with a 27-13 win at Scottsbluff, which, I think Waverly probably still deserves to be number 3, but Elkhorn North is having a great season as well.
Yeah, both 6-0, still undefeated on the season. There's not. I don't know that there's probably a ton of difference, but it's always kind of hard to drop a team even when they stay undefeated and do their job.
Jet Tinglehoff, 113 yards and 2 touchdowns for Elkhorn North in that one. Tommy Mechna had a receiving touchdown. He's having a great season for them as well. And then Waverly was up 27-0 against Scottsbluff in the first half. Just came out and punched them in the mouth. They intercepted a screen pass and took it back to the house. So that Waverly defense, they're for real. But Scottsbluff kind of got something going a little bit in the second half, but dug themselves too big of a hole. Nolan Moss, 191 yards passing and a touchdown. As a team, 27 carries for 82 yards and a touchdown. So Scottsbluff did a good job of kind of keeping their running game in check, which is the strength of that team. Drew Moser had runs at 26-16 with a touchdown. So that's the chunk of the yardage there as well.
Sure.
But you give up a defensive touchdown and a couple of passing touchdowns there. Braden Kuoma had the pick 6 there. But Sebastian Boyle, 26 carries, 148 yards and a touchdown. He's continuing to have a great season there. Scottsbluff defense had 11 tackles for loss and a pick, and just couldn't quite muster enough offense there. But that's a team that got off to a great start, has hit a tough run of really quality opponents and haven't been able to get a win, but nobody wants to see the Bearcats moving forward. I don't think anybody wants to see Plattsmouth either.
No, they're playing pretty good ball right now.
55-21. Gabe Villamonte, 10 of 11 for 152 yards and a touchdown. The only incompletion was a pick. So all 11 of his passes were caught.
Didn't hit the
ground. Dominic Bersolino, 19 carries, 123 yards, and 4 touchdowns. And Ethan Walker, 7 catches, 141 yards, or 7 carries, 141 yards, and a touchdown. 3 catches for 33 yards. So really impressive offense performance. Gage Olson, the 5 catches, 93 yards, and a touchdown. The other kind of close result there, York 41-20 at Gretna East, Norris 63-20 against Beatrice, but Grand Island Northwest barely held on against Hastings, 29-28 there, despite Camden Jensen chucked that thing 40 times. We had 20 of them for 227 yards and 3 touchdowns. Also carried the ball 13 times for 83 yards. So the quarterback basically was their offense.
Yeah, no kidding.
Chase Wiegert, his favorite target, 115 yards on 6 catches and a touchdown. A couple other guys had receiving touchdowns there. And then Seward at number 9, 61-12 win against Lincoln Northwest. Another big game for Treston Haas, who had 3 touchdowns, 143 yards passing, and 111 yards rushing there. So that, and then we already mentioned Scottsbluff dropped to number 10 after that loss, so they're still hanging in there. So
yep,
those are the results in B.
Not a ton of top 10 matchups coming up this week in Class B. I think York and Seward might be the only one.
Correct.
That is on Friday at York. So we will look forward to a pretty good, pretty decent slate of Class A games this week. Maybe not quite as strong of a slate in Class B, though.
Yep. Got some shout-outs here to get us out of here on. I normally keep this to 11-man because it's hard to compare 11 versus the lower classes. But what Ainsworth Senior Carter Nelson did.
Hey, I've heard of that guy.
Yeah, needs recognition. We haven't talked about him much this season, but 11 of 14 passing for 155 yards and touchdown. Okay.
Not bad.
16 carries for 120 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Pretty good.
2 catches for 31 yards, 10 tackles, 2 interceptions, and 75 return yards. He had a fumble recovery and a defensive touchdown. Just literally ripped the ball out of guys' hands and ran it back the length of the field.
Yep, I think I saw a clip of that one.
He also was their kicker, 7 kickoffs, including 3 touchbacks. He had 2 punts of 57 and 42 yards that both landed in the 20 in a 60-8 win against Eldon Pope John. So literally everything a guy can do on the field, he did on Friday night.
Absolutely. You love to see it, obviously, coming to Nebraska next year, which we also love to see.
Auburn senior Maverick Binder, 22 carries for 242 yards and 4 touchdowns. Also had a 27-yard punt return and a 13-yard kickoff return and a 40-26 win there for the Lincoln Christian there for Auburn there. Talked about him a lot in basketball, but getting it done on the gridiron as well. Wahoo Newman Jr., Connor Booth, we basically mentioned him every single week now. The season he's putting together.
Kind of
junior
ridiculous.
Nebraska commit.
Yeah.
I think there are people like, really? Kid from Wahoo committing on scholarship as a junior?
Watch this kid play. He gets it done.
19 carries, 242 yards, 4 touchdowns. Also had a 4-yard receiving touchdown and a tackle for loss and a 56-23 win at North Bend Central.
And frankly, that's kind of a mediocre game. He had 200 yards in the first quarter in a game this year. So excited to see more Connor Booth for sure.
Mitchell Jr., Des Smith, 20 carries for 246 yards and 5 touchdowns. Also converted a 2-point opportunity. Had 2 kickoff returns for 49 yards. Had an interception and broke up 4 passes there in a 65-30 win at Alliance. Lincoln Lutheran sophomore Braxton Glines, 18 for 25 for 343 yards and 3 touchdowns. Also had a rushing touchdown in a 38-13 win at Centennial. Oakland Craig Jr., Braylon Anderson, 16 of 19 for 272 yards and 3 touchdowns. Also had 2 rushing touchdowns on 3 carries. Converted a 2-point try in a 56 win at Fremont Bergen. And finally, Broken Bow senior quarterback Eli Cobble. So originally there was a mistake on MacTrust, and I looked this up. They attributed their entire team total to him. So they had 52 rushes for 440 yards rushing. And I'm like,
wait, that can't be
that's not right. No, he only had 14 carries for 219 yards and 3 touchdowns. Also completed 4 of his 6 passes for 58 yards and another touchdown. Blocked a field goal. 6 kickoffs, went 5 of 5 on PATs in a 43-19 win at Holdridge there.
What a excellent group of standouts this week. Jacob, thank you so much for letting me join you here today on the Nebraska Preps post-game show. Jacob will be back next week to keep you filled in on everything going on in the Nebraska high school. This season, it's football. This part of the CEC year, it's football season. So it'll be all football for the next couple of weeks. And then I'm excited. We're almost to the basketball season.
Almost.
You know, that's what I love as well. So thanks for joining us, Jacob. Thank you for letting me hang out with you. We'll have more Nebraska Preps postgame next week.
A Hurrdat Sports Network production.